What happens in your brain when you're in love? Decades of research finds that love's reaction inside the brain models our basic needs for well-being. You can't eat. You can't sleep. Your stomach and heart flutter when this person contacts you or suggests spending time together. Sounds like all the telltale signs you may be falling in love. But what happens in your brain when you begin to feel love struck? And how does the brain change over time when it comes to love? Love is a biological necessity. It's as needed for our well-being as exercise, water, and food. 2 decades of research has shown that when it comes to early stage, intense romantic love, the kind we often think of when we talk about being love struck, a very primitive part of the brain's reward system located in the midbrain is activated first. Brown and her lab partners used functional magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, to study 10 women and 7 men who were intensely in love. Based on their scores on the passionate love scale, a 14-item questionnaire designed to assess the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral aspect of passionate love, that relationship researchers have widely used for decades. People who score in the highest range of this assessment are deemed as being wildly, even recklessly in love. Those who score in the lowest range have admittedly lost their thrill for their partner. Participants in Brown's study alternately viewed a photograph of their beloved and a photograph of a familiar person. When viewing the photo of their romantic partner, participants experienced brain activation in the midbrain's ventral tegmental area, VTA, which is the part of the brain connected to meeting basic needs such as drinking when we're thirsty and eating when we're hungry. It's the area of the brain that controls things like swallowing and other basic reflexes. While we often think about romantic love as the euphoric, amorphous thing and as a complex emotion, the activation we see in this very basic part of the brain is telling us that romantic love is actually a drive to fulfill a basic need. Additional MRI studies conducted by Casipro shed more light on how love affects your brain. Her team found 12 areas of the brain work together to release chemicals such as the feel-good hormone, dopamine, the cuddle hormone, oxytocin, and the adrenaline, which introduces a euphoric sense of purpose. Her findings also indicate that the brain's reward circuit, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex, which is very sensitive to behaviors that induce pleasure, lit up on brain scans when talking about a loved one because of increased blood flow in these areas. While all of this is happening, Casipio noted our levels of serotonin, a key hormone in regulating appetite and intrusive anxious thoughts, drop. Low levels of serotonin, and common among those with anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorders. This explains why people in the early stages of love can become obsessed with small details, spending hours debating about a text to or from their beloved. How does longer-term love differ in the brain? Once the initial excitement of new love has worn off and a couple becomes more committed, the activation areas of the brain also expand. Brown found parts of the brain's basal ganglia, the area responsible for motor control, were activated when participants looked at photos of their long-term partner. This is an area of the brain heavily involved in promoting attachment, giving humans and other mammals the ability to stick it out even when things aren't going quite so well. Even among couples who have been married 20 years or longer, many showed neutral activity in dopamine-rich regions associated with reward and motivation, particularly the VTA, in line with those early-stage romantic love studies. In a 2012 study in the journal Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience, participants showed greater brain activation in the VTA in response to images of their long-term spouse when compared with images of a close friend and a highly familiar acquaintance. Some studies also show common neutral activity in several regions, often activated in maternal attachment, including the frontal, limbic, and basal ganglia areas. Long-term love also boosts activation in more cognitive areas of the brain, such as the angular gyrus, the part of the brain associated with complex language functions, and the mirror neuron system, a region that helps you anticipate the actions of a loved one. That's the reasoning behind couples who finish each other's sentences or have a way of moving around a small kitchen cooking together without issue. People in love have this symbiotic, synergistic connection thanks to the mirror neuron system. And that's why we often say some couples are better together than the sum of their parts. Love makes us sharper and more creative thinkers. Can we find connectiveness outside of romance? It's important to note that there are a variety of types of love that can benefit the brain. A 2015 study in Science found mutual gazing had a profound effect on both dogs and their owners. Of the duos that had spent the greatest amount of time looking into each other's eyes, both male and female dogs experienced a 130% rise in oxytocin levels, and both male and female owners experienced a 300% increase. Other studies, including a 2020 review in Social Neuroscience, show that face-to-face interaction and eye gazing between mothers and their infants activated the brain's reward system and increased gray matter volume in mothers in an attempt to promote positive mother-infant relationships and increase bonding. Even your love for a passion, such as running, biking, knitting, or enjoying nature, evokes activation of the brain's angular gyrus, a region involved into a number of processes related to language, number processing, spatial cognition, memory retrieval, and attention, according to a study in the journal Cognitive Neuroscience. While the intensity of brain activity differs, the love between a parent and a child, a dog and its owner, or even one's love for a hobby or passion can provide the feeling of connectiveness we are all looking for and that we need to survive as humans. Empathy and compassion toward other species decrease with evolutionary divergence time. Article. Currently, the planet is inhabited by several millions of extremely diversified species. Not all of them arouse emotions of the same nature or intensity in humans. Little is known about the extent of our affective responses toward them and the factors that may explain these differences. Our online survey involved 3,500 raters who had to make choices depending on specific questions designed to either access their empathetic perceptions or their compassionate reactions toward an extended photographic sampling of organisms. Results show a strong negative correlation between empathy scores and the divergence time separating them from us. However, beyond a certain time of divergence, our empathic perceptions stabilize at a minimum level. Compassion scores, although based on less spontaneous choices, remain strongly correlated to empathy scores and time of divergence. The mosaic of features characterizing humans has been acquired gradually over the course of the evolution, and the phylogenetically closer a species is to us, the more it shares common traits with us. Our results could be explained by the fact that many of these traits may arouse sensory biases. These anthropomorphic signals could be able to mobilize cognitive circuitry and to trigger pro-social behaviors, usually at work in human relationships. Sympathy beyond the confines of man, that is, humanity to the lower animals, seems to be one of the latest moral acquisitions. This virtue, one of the noblest with which man is endowed, seems to arise incidentally from our sympathies becoming more tender and more widely diffused until they are extended to all sentient beings. Charles Darwin, 1871. Whether it be for nutrition, recreational and ritual practices, research, or wildlife management, man's interactions with other organisms are countless, complex, and go back to the roots of mankind. The nature of these interactions is not restricted to their utilitarian function. They also convey a diversified and ambivalent emotional component which can resurface with intensity in social debates about animal welfare or nature conservation, and may even lead to radical actions under certain circumstances.